Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking an unflinching look at an experience that is, well, almost universally shared, yet it's so profoundly painful when it strikes.
It really is.
We're talking about the deep, intricate landscape of betrayal, and this is a topic that, it hits right at the very foundation of our ability to connect, to trust, and to feel secure in the world.
It does. And, the very nature of betrayal makes it a difficult subject to analyze dispassionately. It's so emotional.
Right.
Whether it stems from a supposed ally, a close friend, a family member, or even someone you counted on professionally, the violation, it fundamentally shakes our social contract, our basic assumptions about relationships.
Absolutely. Because this experience is so widespread and yet so deeply personal, our mission here is to move past the initial hurt, to get beyond that natural instinct to just dwell in the pain.
Which is a very strong instinct.
It is. So we are going to intentionally analyze this process. We want to provide you, the learner, with the tools to understand the complexity of the wound, the psychology of the offender, and then the structured, necessary steps toward deep healing and recovery.
And we'll ensure this discussion is deliberate and detailed. We need to explore how betrayal affects your sense of self and security, moving beyond, simple emotional upset to psychological trauma it really represents.
Yes.
Then we'll dedicate significant time to understanding the complex and sometimes surprising reasons why people betray, recognizing that it is so often rooted in personal weakness rather than just pure malice.
And that's a huge point. And then most critically, we'll structure a clear, actionable, a map, if you will, for navigating that emotional journey toward forgiveness, establishing rock-solid boundaries and truly achieving personal growth.
Making the next version of yourself stronger than the last.
Exactly. So let's start right at the beginning. What happens the moment betrayal hits?
The initial shock.
Okay, so let's unpack this experience. Betrayal is never just an external event that happens to a relationship. It's a profound internal injury.
That's a great way to put it. An internal injury.
And the intensity of that injury is dictated entirely by how close the betrayer was to you.
That is the essential insight. The magnitude of the wound is directly proportional to the level of trust you had invested. It's a simple equation, really.
More trust, more pain.
Exactly. When the betrayal comes from someone within your inner circle, a best friend, a sibling, a spouse, the impact is just devastating because your expectations were at their absolute highest. It represents a catastrophic failure of the social infrastructure you had built around yourself.
I think we have all been there in some capacity. And the pain, it doesn't just come from the act itself, but from the realization that the person you thought you knew,
Right.
the person you granted access to your most vulnerable spots, was maybe a carefully constructed facade.
Let's explore that. Let's explore that shattering of the foundation through a very common, deeply personal scenario. Imagine you've confided something truly vulnerable, something you're ashamed of or afraid of, to a close friend. You trust them implicitly to keep that secret safe.
It's locked in the vault.
It's supposed to be, but then they share it. They weaponize your vulnerability, maybe for their own gain or just for attention. That moment is psychologically devastating.
It's so much more than just gossip. It's an immediate, shocking realization that the foundation of that entire relationship was based on a lie.
Or, at minimum, a fatal misjudgment on your part. Or so it feels.
Exactly. The person you relied on for support and discretion has in an instant shown you that your trust was misplaced.
And here is the core psychological fallout, the ripple effect. This is so important to understand. Betrayal doesn't stop at damaging that single relationship.
No.
It instantly forces the betrayed person to question the entire framework of safety they've built. You think, if this person, whom I trusted unconditionally, could do this,
Then who else can?
exactly, who else is capable of it? Every other relationship becomes suspect.
So the stability you thought you had, it just vanishes entirely. That default assumption of human goodness, or at least safety, is compromised.
Perhaps irrevocably, unless deliberate healing occurs. It forces a complete reassessment, often triggering a state that psychologists refer to as betrayal trauma.
And that's a specific kind of trauma, right? It's different from other types.
It's very distinct, yes. It's distinct from general trauma because it specifically involves a violation by someone you depended on for survival or well-being, a parent, a spouse, a close protector.
So it's the dependency that makes it so potent.
It attacks the core cognitive processes we use to evaluate the world. Trust, once broken in this profound way, become incredibly difficult to rebuild because the fundamental mechanism of assessing safety, your own judgment, has been undermined.
You don't trust yourself anymore.
You don't trust your own instincts. That's the real wound.
Now let's contrast that intense personal violation with, say, the professional sphere, which carries a very different but equally heavy weight.
A different flavor of pain.
Yeah. We have all heard the story or, lived the reality of the trusted coworker who takes credit for a large project you poured your soul into.
The workplace betrayal. It's unique because it exploits structural hierarchies and ambition.
Right.
When a colleague you considered an ally, someone you assumed had your back, performs an act of professional sabotage, it strikes not just at your emotions, it strikes at your livelihood, your identity, and your future career trajectory.
I felt completely blindsided when it happened to me. You count on that implicit partnership, the shared goal, the professional camaraderie.
Of course, you're a team.
But when they steal the spotlight or misrepresent your work, you lose more than just a relationship. You lose the recognition you deserved, which impacts your status, your potential promotions.
Your financial security. It's a direct threat.
It really is.
And I think the difference is often that personal betrayal feels like an attack on your self-worth.
Am I not worthy of loyalty?
Precisely. Whereas professional betrayal can feel more like an attack on your value and your agency.
Is my work not good enough on its own?
Yes. And it often comes out of nowhere. A strike from the very person who should have been your shield in that environment. And the immediate behavioral consequence in both spheres is the same.
The instinct to become guarded.
Immediately.
That is the turning point, isn't it?
Yeah.
The person cannot simply operate with the same openness and assumption of good faith they did before the incident.
Impossible. They are immediately forced into a state of self-preservation.
The walls go up.
The walls go up, correct. And the individual learns a painful but, vital lesson. They start building those walls, not out of malice, but out of necessity.
Right.
Those walls become a new awareness, a necessity to set rigorous boundaries where maybe none existed before. It is a protective measure born from deep pain.
So we can look at betrayal, paradoxically, as a forced learning experience.
It is. It's a brutal teacher.
It teaches us exactly who deserves the vulnerability we offer and what limits we have to establish moving forward. But managing that initial instinct to just become a fortress is the key, right?
It's the key to preventing the external trauma from becoming an internal chronic disability.
The disability, that's a strong word.
I think it's accurate. Because that's how the moment of shock transitions. It rapidly moves into the internal erosion of self-perception. And that is where the deepest emotional weight resides.
So if Section 1 was about the structural damage to our relationships, Section 2 has to grapple with the profound damage to the self.
To our own internal landscape.
Betrayal goes so much deeper than simple hurt. It profoundly messes with your sense of security, your trust in others, and, most critically, your self-esteem.
This is the phase of cognitive dissonance. Your brain is struggling to reconcile two opposing realities. I trusted this person. This person proved untrustworthy.
And the brain hates that contradiction.
It hates it. And so, why does the betrayer's action impact the victim's view of themselves? Because the victim starts a relentless cycle of self-questioning.
That intellectual loop is agonizing. Instead of assigning blame where it belongs to the betrayer's poor moral character, you start internalizing the flaw.
Precisely. The betrayal suggests that your judgment was fundamentally flawed, that maybe you missed the obvious red flags, or perhaps you revealed too much too soon.
The questions just eat you alive. Was I too naive to trust them? Or should I have been more cautious? How did I not see this coming?
Yes. And that profound self-doubt, this loss of confidence in your ability to assess risk and character, is often the hardest part of the trauma. It makes the victim feel foolish.
The feeling of naivete is such a heavy emotional weight. You begin questioning every single choice you made leading up to the act. It cripples your internal compass.
It does. It leads to uncertainty in every subsequent decision and relationship, even those completely unrelated to the betrayer.
It just poisons the well for everything else.
It does. And this internal questioning is what drives the behavioral changes we talked about earlier. The construction of walls. The individual becomes highly cautious, extremely reluctant to invest vulnerability in future relationships. We see the person becoming perpetually on edge.
What does on edge actually look like in practice? It's a state of hypervigilance, right?
Absolutely. Hypervigilance is the constant scanning of every interaction for potential signs of deception or vulnerability or dishonesty.
Mhm.
Psychologically, you are prioritizing defense over engagement.
You're not present in the moment anymore.
You're not. You're analyzing it. You start interpreting neutral or even positive actions through the filter of past betrayal. A simple delay in a response might be seen as a sign of plotting. A misplaced word is proof of imminent dishonesty.
So you start seeing betrayal where there might not be any, simply out of a deep-seated fear of getting hurt again.
The defensive posture, which was born from survival, becomes the default setting. You're suspicious of anyone who attempts to get too close.
And that must be exhausting.
It is emotionally exhausting.
Mhm.
Maintaining those walls requires massive cognitive energy. Think of it as running constant security checks in your mind.
Right.
You are devoting energy that should be used for connection, for creativity, for joy, entirely to defense mechanisms against a hypothetical future threat.
That is the great irony and the deep trap of betrayal. While those walls feel protective, they simultaneously prevent you from forming the very thing you crave.
Deep, meaningful connections.
You're missing out on potential trust, on true intimacy, because the barriers you erected are now too difficult to bring down. The fear of future pain outweighs the desire for present joy.
And that is the central, difficult challenge of healing. The goal is to move beyond being perpetually suspicious. We have to find a balance.
How do you do that?
The question becomes how to protect yourself wisely and smartly without completely closing yourself off to new, genuinely good relationships. This shift from fearful guardedness to mindful discernment is crucial.
So how do we achieve that discernment? How do we transition from a default setting of everyone is a threat to I need to assess risk intelligently?
Well, it requires awareness and a lot of cognitive restructuring. You have to learn that trust is not a binary switch. It's not all or nothing.
It's a dimmer switch, not an on-off switch.
I like that. It's a dimmer switch. It's a graded scale. You can still trust people, but that trust must now be earned deliberately. It has to be built upon consistent evidence of loyalty and honesty, starting with low-risk vulnerability and gradually escalating.
You're replacing that automatic, naive trust of the past with a more conscious earned trust.
That's it, exactly. So the walls are necessary shields initially, but they have to be temporary structures.
Mm.
If they become permanent prisons, you lose more than just the ability to trust others.
You lose the ability to trust your own current judgment.
Because it's constantly clouded by past fear. By working to find this balance, you replace self-doubt with self-assurance. You start trusting your own internal compass again. But this time, it's recalibrated.
This is a smarter compass.
A much smarter compass. And to truly move past the self-blame, we have to achieve a fundamental understanding of the source of the injury, the person who committed the betrayal.
This shift in perspective is absolutely essential for liberation, I think. While the natural human tendency is to dwell on the pain we feel, the consequences, a huge step toward moving forward is understanding the underlying motivations of the betrayal itself.
Understanding the why allows us to depersonalize the act. When we see the true, complex motivation, we recognize that the betrayal was often less about the victim's intrinsic worth and more about the betrayer's profound limitations or weaknesses.
And that's where we move past the simplistic villain narrative, the black and white thinking.
We have to. What is fascinating here is the research showing that the majority of betrayals do not stem from pure, mustache-twirling malice.
Right, a calculated desire to inflict harm.
It's much rarer than we think. They often arise from a place of deep weakness, insecurity, situational fear, or immaturity. Let's break down those primary drivers. Let's start with fear and self-preservation. This is one of the most powerful and immediate motivators. Self-preservation means prioritizing one's own immediate safety or gain at the expense of another.
So this isn't malice. This is, transactional cowardice.
That's a perfect term for it, transactional cowardice.
Can you give us a detailed scenario of how this manifests?
Certainly. Imagine two employees, close friends, working on a major, high-profile project that fails spectacularly. And let's say it fails due to flaws inherent in the design, not their execution.
Okay, so it's not their fault.
It's not their fault. But the CEO demands a scapegoat to protect the company's reputation. If one friend, fearing for their own job, immediately and falsely points the finger at the other, they have sacrificed the relationship.
As a cost to save themselves.
Exactly. That is a moment of panicked self-protection. The choice is immediate and primal. Prioritize my livelihood over our loyalty. The consequence to the victim is the same, but the motivation for the betrayer stems from their own fear and perceived scarcity.
It doesn't necessarily mean they wanted the other person to fail.
Not at all. It means in that moment, They felt they had no other choice. It's a weak choice, but it's driven by fear.
Okay, so that's fear. Now contrast that with betrayal driven by ambition and insecurity. That feels more calculated.
It often is, especially in professional or competitive environments. Fierce ambition and intense, often uncontrolled desire for success frequently leads people to step over colleagues.
The coworker who took the credit for the project we discussed earlier is a textbook example of this.
It is. They view the relationship not as a partnership, but as an obstacle to be circumvented or a stepping stone to be exploited.
Just a means to an end.
And tying ambition to insecurity provides a deeper layer of insight. If the betrayer harbors deep internal doubts, feeling that they aren't inherently good enough to succeed organically, they are much more likely to resort to shortcuts and unethical behavior.
So their internal lack of confidence pushes them toward external destructive actions.
That's right. So in a personal context, maybe a partner who cheats or sabotages a relationship isn't acting from a place of great desirability or strength, but from profound insecurity about their own value or future.
So they preemptively destroy the relationship before they can be hurt themselves.
It's a profound lack of self-worth masked as external aggression or manipulation. They are attempting to control an outcome, their social standing, their professional trajectory, their emotional vulnerability, because they fundamentally distrust their own ability to achieve success or happiness legitimately.
And finally, let's explore the role of emotional immaturity. This one is crucial because it's the type of betrayal that often feels the most baffling and arbitrary to the victim.
Yes, where did that even come from? Betrayal.
Exactly. It's when the betrayal isn't a deliberate malicious plot, but a catastrophic failure of empathy and foresight.
Emotional immaturity is characterized by an inability to fully grasp the long-term cascading effects of one's actions on others. The betrayer is narrowly focused on their immediate needs, their desires, or the momentary discomfort they're experiencing.
For example, someone who just can't handle the internal discomfort of holding a secret, so they immediately share it, just to relieve that pressure.
Right, or someone who desperately craves attention. And the easiest way to get that attention is by sharing confidential, dramatic information. They don't ever pause to consider the damage that information will inflict.
They're just thinking about the here and now.
They are acting from a place of emotional dysregulation. They lack the developed capacity for delayed gratification or long-term empathy. They are, in essence, behaving like a child in an adult scenario, prioritizing immediate emotional relief over moral obligation or relational integrity.
The crucial takeaway here is, I think, profoundly liberating for the betrayed person. Understanding these motivations, fear, insecurity, immaturity, it allows you to see that the betrayal stemmed from the betrayer's personal weakness.
From their flaws, their internal struggles, not from a deficit in your own self-worth or actions.
And that insight helps you separate the act of betrayal from your own value. You realize, this wasn't about me being worthless. This was about them being deeply limited or struggling.
And that knowledge doesn't excuse the behavior. Let's be very clear about that.
Not at all.
But it provides the essential emotional distance needed to break the cycle of self-doubt and begin the true work of healing.
So now that we have the intellectual understanding of the why, the focus must shift entirely to the how. How do we take this knowledge and use it to successfully move forward?
Moving forward after betrayal is, without question, the most significant challenge. And it is critical to recognize that this is not a linear process.
It's messy.
Very messy. There's no predetermined time limit. There's no rush to get over betrayal. Healing requires deliberate, sustained, and highly personal effort.
Okay, so we need to dedicate real time here to the mechanics of healing, starting with the most controversial element, forgiveness.
Ah, yes, the big F word.
Right. In popular culture, forgiveness is often mistaken for instant reconciliation, which is why so many people resist it. We need to detail the concept of forgiveness as a tool for personal freedom.
Forgiveness is not a gift to the betrayer. It is an act of radical self-service. We have to be very clear on that.
So what's the definition we should be working with?
The definition we must adhere to is this. Forgiveness means letting go of the anger, the pain, and the resentment that constantly binds you emotionally to the perpetrator and the traumatic past event.
That anger, that desire for retribution, it acts as heavy emotional baggage.
It does. You are carrying the weight of their moral failure long after they have moved on. Forgiveness is about dropping that weight, allowing you to walk freely into your future. It's about freeing yourself from being tethered to the past injury.
So where do you even start with that? It feels monumental.
The absolute necessary starting point for this process is self-forgiveness. The betrayed person must begin by forgiving themselves for having trusted the person in the first place, or for having potentially missed perceived red flags.
And this step requires that cognitive restructuring we mentioned. You have to consciously remind yourself, trusting in good faith is a virtue, not a flaw.
That's it. You cannot blame yourself for another person's moral failure. You made the best decision you could with the information you had at the time. Your virtue allowed them to betray you, but the failing is theirs alone.
The moment you let go of that self-blame, you regain complete control over your internal narrative.
Self-forgiveness restores your competence and judgment. It means acknowledging the pain, but asserting your agency over your response. Forgiveness means release. It fundamentally does not mean reconciliation or necessarily allowing the betrayer back into your life.
That's a huge distinction. You can forgive the harm without reopening the door.
You must.
So once that internal emotional knot of anger and self-blame is untied, the focus has to immediately shift to external action.
Yes, to setting healthy boundaries. If betrayal taught you anything, it taught you the precise location of your vulnerabilities. Setting boundaries is the proactive, conscious response to that painful education.
Boundaries are the rules of engagement you establish in relationships to protect yourself emotionally, mentally, professionally moving forward.
They serve as a roadmap for what you are willing to accept and, crucially, what you will absolutely not tolerate.
We need to get granular here, I think. A fuzzy boundary is, I hope this doesn't happen again.
Which is useless.
A healthy, specific boundary is an actionable commitment. For instance, if the betrayal involved financial deception, the new boundary might be, I will never co-sign on a loan or share a joint account without weekly, transparent auditing.
Perfect. Or, if the betrayal involved a breach of privacy, the new boundary might be, I will share only non-sensitive general information with new colleagues until they have established a documented track record of discretion over at least 6 months.
This isn't suspicion. This is what, discerning risk management?
That is exactly what it is. And the act of establishing and enforcing these boundaries is transformative. It transitions you from being a passive victim of an event to an active architect of your future relationships.
You're defining your terms. And this action reinforces that you trust your own judgment enough to protect yourself.
This step is fundamental to the rebuilding of trust. You can start introducing new people into your life, but you do so using a model of graded trust.
The dimmer switch again.
The dimmer switch. Trust is no longer given freely. It is earned slowly, starting with low-stakes interactions. You observe consistency, loyalty, and discretion over time.
It's almost like a probation period for a new relationship, isn't it? You test the waters with small vulnerabilities.
You do. If they pass, you escalate slightly. If they fail, you pull back immediately and enforce the boundary you established. This approach prevents you from being blindsided again because you are actively managing the risk.
So any future hurt is localized and manageable because you've only invested what was appropriate for that stage of the relationship.
Exactly. This mindfulness prevents the automatic, wholesale collapse of trust.
And this detailed process leads directly to the final and most positive stage, reflection and growth.
Yes. Betrayal, though agonizing, serves as a powerful, albeit painful, teacher. It clarifies your non-negotiable personal values.
How does it do that?
Well, when you experience the pain of a violation of loyalty or honesty, that pain serves as a massive signal flare, indicating what you truly value most.
Ah, so you don't know how much you value something until it's violated.
Precisely. Betrayal forces you to articulate these core values: honesty, loyalty, clear communication, integrity, and use them as the metric for all future connections.
The ultimate goal, then, is not just survival, but using the experience to become stronger. Not hardened or cynical, but fundamentally more resilient.
And you achieve this by setting those healthier, clearer boundaries and being meticulously mindful about who you allow into your inner life.
And the final key to growth is the full restoration of self-judgment.
Trusting your judgment again means knowing that you made the best decisions you could with the experience you had in the past, and now, armed with this hard-won, detailed knowledge of human nature and your own limits.
You can and will make better decisions going forward.
That acceptance of the past trauma as a catalyst for future wisdom is the definition of personal growth derived from a painful experience.
So we have mapped out this journey. We moved from defining the immediate pain and the crippling cycle of self-doubt to understanding the complex motivations of the betrayer, who often acts from a place of weakness, not malice. And finally, we arrived at the deliberate, actionable stages of self-forgiveness, boundary setting, and mindful, discerning growth.
This difficult journey truly leads to a better, clearer, and more resilient version of yourself. Your future relationships, built on this clear foundation of articulated personal values and well-defined boundaries, will inherently be stronger and more transparent.
Here's where this profound analysis comes together for you, the learner. We've analyzed the immediate neurological pain, the psychological consequences, the complex motivations, and the structured path to healing and rebuilding.
So what is the most critical, deeper implication of this work? It is that the greatest lesson learned from betrayal isn't just compiling a list of who not to trust next time.
That's just a surface-level behavioral adjustment.
It is. The true, fundamental shift lies in how you use this experience to become so secure in your own values, your boundaries, and your inherent self-worth.
That the impact of future betrayals, should they occur, and life guarantees they will, can never again fundamentally shatter your core sense of self-worth.
You are stronger than the circumstances. This deep, internalized strength fundamentally changes the quality of your most intimate connections. You engage from a position of secure self-knowledge and discernment rather than fearful, naive dependency.
So consider this as you move forward. How does this new strength, this profound clarity of self-worth, change the way you choose who to let close to you?
And how will it fundamentally alter the way you define happiness and security within those connections, knowing that your safety is now internal, not reliant on the actions of others?
That is a measure of your true growth.
Stay strong. Commit to the work of setting those clear boundaries and trust that the effort you put into establishing this discernment will serve you in every single facet of your life going forward.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, take care.